Jasmine, when you say global financial apocalypse, it always sounds, something thousands of miles away on the other side of the planet. What does inflation in the UK mean for people who've really had a tough time just getting by these last 2 years? Is it a choice, as they say, between heating and eating?
Tragically, I think it is. Yes, I mean, already we've had a lot of people who've been struggling. Through lockdowns, there have been people who have not had the work that they were having before. Maybe they haven't even been able to get onto universal credit. So for a lot of people, they were already struggling. And now you get these astounding rises in energy bills, and we've got the price of food increasing. I'm hearing that, come the summer, we are likely to have food shortages as well. So yes, it is heating and eating, and it's not the consumer's fault. It's not the fault. As you pointed out, many people have done what they were told. The government, the World Health Organization said, do this, do that. They did it. And things have simply got worse. And I personally very much blame the lockdowns. I mean, it's what you've just said, the lockdowns across the world, not just in this country, but across the world, apart from, Sweden, Florida, Texas, a few of those. And also very much the quantitative easing that you've mentioned, the money printing, which has been done on steroids over the last 2 years. It started, as you know, in the financial crash, 2007, 2009, the magic money tree really started to produce lots of leaves, and it's just gone bananas, I think, in the last 2 years, particularly in America.
Yeah, are we just dragged along by the quantitative easing in America? I mean, in a sense, do we have control of our future when it comes to something like... I mentioned that 11.1% wholesale price index in the US, which just came out today, and which it feels to me closer to what actual inflation is on the ground. I mean, do we just get dragged along in its wake, or can we, like Sweden, chart our own course to an extent?
Well, yes, you would think so. The problem is we're kind of looking in the rearview mirror a bit. So as you say, we've had lockdowns around the world, and that means that's caused supply chain issues. And, as you've mentioned, there's been a sudden surge in demand for living. And so that's much of the inflation that we have at the moment. But I think that the quantitative easing, that huge avalanche, and it's in this country very much. We've produced billions and billions of pounds over the last couple of years. That avalanche is still to come, I think, in the actual economy. So we've got what we have done as a nation, but as you pointed out, we buy stuff from China. We're net importers in this country. So these, we haven't even mentioned Ukraine yet, which is kind of the cherry on the top. It's not the fundamental reason for the problems we've got, but, it's really not helping. So these supply chain issues are happening all around the world. And you've mentioned America, they very much have it. And frankly, the figures that we've come up with, as you say, today we've heard that CPI, the Consumer Prices Index, is 7% in this country, 8.5% or whatever in America. Those figures, I think, are just fiction. In real terms, if you fill up your car with petrol, if you've been to the supermarket, if you've looked at your energy bill, in real honest terms, it's double figures already, I consider. I think they're just literally fiddling with the figures to make it look not quite so bad.
What does it mean for things like housing, for example? Because when you say to anybody under a certain age, the first mortgage I got, I think that was 15%. And people have gotten used to money. Yeah. You can basically borrow money at no cost. So a mortgage doesn't terrify you the way a mortgage terrified you in the 70s. Are people going to have to relearn some basically totally forgotten economic facts of life?
They may have to, because what's happening now is, I mean, the house prices in this country defying gravity. It's extraordinary how they're going up, but it is very largely because of the complete devaluation of the pound, and so actually this is inflation in action. Of course, there is the possibility that interest rates should go up, but the problem is that we're in stagflation, really. So stagflation, as you know, is where you have a stagnant economy, but you have rising prices. And that's awful, because with a stagnant economy, you would want to increase the flow of money. You'd put interest rates down. With inflation, you should decrease the flow of money. You should raise interest rates. So, you've got this fight. We did have stagflation back in the 70s, and what ultimately got us out of it was pain, basically, incredibly high interest rates, up to 20%, as you say. Would they do it now? I honestly, I'm doubting it. And I don't just mean this country. You look around the world. I mean, the yen in Japan, it's 0.25%, and they're saying they will lend. Well, they'll borrow indefinitely, just to keep things buoyant. So this is happening particularly across what we call the West, where the magic money tree, the quantitative easing, is just being used, I think, to paper over massive cracks.
Right. When you mentioned Ukraine just now, people think about it in terms of oil and gas, because that's in the headlines. But Ukraine is also the so-called breadbasket of the world. When I was over there a couple of weeks ago, all the oligarchs are basically guys in the farming business. You can sell apples and become an oligarch in Ukraine. That's what they export. So it's going to be, so when it comes to things like wheat, it's going to be basics. It's going to be the price of bread that becomes hugely unaffordable. And that last time round, you mentioned the business 2008, the Lehman Brothers and all that. That basically caused the Arab Spring, because people couldn't afford to buy a loaf of bread in Egypt, so they threw Mubarak out. Are we in for like political instability driven by inflation?
It does make sense. I mean, I don't want to prophesy problems, but I don't know how I can't, frankly, because, as you say, when people can't eat, they get desperate. And it is quite often bread, particularly, as you say, the basics. So you have that problem. You've mentioned various foodstuffs. The other problem that we have here is, the price of fertilizer. So that's quadrupled over the last year. It's an insane price. And so that's affecting not just vegetable crops and those sort of crops in this country, but also dairy farming, beef farming, and I'm hearing some farmers saying, for example, egg farmers saying that they may have to kill their chickens in the summer because they won't be able to feed them. So it's that sort of knock-on effect that you potentially have. All of it, I consider, and I go back to what you said at the start, all of it utterly, utterly unnecessary. I put it all down to lockdown, the evils of lockdown, which have not only disrupted the supply chains, but also seemingly necessitated quantitative easing. And we're going to live with this for a few years to come.
Yeah, I'm stunned by the way our leaders apparently thought you could essentially close the global economy for 2 years and there would be no cost to it. I don't know, even I understand a lot of politicians are economically illiterate, but I don't understand how they thought they could just do that for 2 weeks to flatten the curve, 2 months to flatten the curve, 2 years to flatten the curve. And meantime, the economy is going nowhere and people can't plan their businesses. People can't plan, you know, oh, Christmas is coming up. We usually do well because we've got a big restaurant and we do a lot of Christmas parties. Oh, but we don't know whether we'll be allowed to do that. How did they think that was going to work for businesses?
Gosh, it's beyond me, really. And what's particularly irritating is that, you know, anybody like me who said this is not a good idea, this is going to cause major problems later on as well as now. We were told, oh, you want to kill granny. And this is for a disease that has a 99.97% survival rate and where the average age of death is 83. It simply does not make sense either in this country or in any other. And we're seeing right now in Shanghai, I'm sure you've seen the videos going around social media of horrendous situation, people locked in their homes, their pets beaten to death. I mean, it's thankfully we didn't have that, but you know, it's a type of insanity, it seems to me, and it has a long-term consequences.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.